For 3 years, a small yellow plastic bracelet lived inside the pocket of Nabintu Nankia's faded sweater. No one asked about it. No one knew why she carried it from room to room, from Sunday to Sunday. Then, on a rainy night in Kampala, the bracelet appeared again. Not in her pocket. On the wrist of a boy lying motionless beneath the white lights of an emergency room. Nabintu saw the bracelet before she saw the child's face. A nurse was shouting. A monitor was counting down in sharp green numbers, and someone said there were less than 40 minutes left to save him. Only then did Nabintu begin to run. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about family kindness and second chances, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more journeys like this. The road to Hope Gardens nursing home curved through the outskirts of Kampala like a ribbon that had been folded too many times. That morning, the city had woken beneath a pale sky. Vendors arranged mangoes on wooden tables. Motorcycle taxis weaved through traffic. School children in green uniforms crossed dusty streets, carrying backpacks larger than their shoulders. Life moved as it always did. Inside, a silver Toyota parked at a red light. However, nobody spoke. Nabintu Nankia sat in the back seat with a brown cloth bag resting on her lap. Her hands remained folded on top of it. The bag contained 3 things: a worn notebook with medical notes written in blue ink, a neatly folded sweater, and a yellow plastic bracelet small enough to fit around a child's wrist. The bracelet had a tiny cartoon lion on it. One ear was missing. Nabintu rubbed her thumb across the broken edge. In the front seat, Kato Samanda tightened both hands around the steering wheel. His eyes stayed on the traffic. Beside him, Amina looked out the window. The silence inside the car seemed heavier than the morning heat. A few months earlier, Kato would never have imagined this day, but life had become smaller. Bills had become larger. The company where he worked had reduced salaries. His mortgage payments had doubled. His son's medical checkups arrived more frequently than before. Every month felt like carrying water in a basket. No matter how hard he worked, something leaked away. At home, pressure collected in corners. The electricity bill sat beneath the fruit bowl. The medicine receipts remained pinned to the refrigerator door. Repair estimates for the roof stayed tucked inside a drawer. Nothing exploded, nothing dramatic happened. Instead, exhaustion settled into the house like dust. Amina had begun sleeping less. Kato had begun speaking less. Nabintu noticed both. She noticed the unopened mail. She noticed the whispered conversations after midnight. She noticed when her son stopped buying sugar because it cost more than before. She noticed because she had spent her life noticing things. For nearly 30 years, she had worked as a community nurse. She had visited villages where roads disappeared during rainy seasons. She had delivered babies by lantern light. She had taught young mothers how to measure medicine with teaspoons. She had watched children survive illnesses that should have taken them. She had also watched families fall apart under burdens nobody else could see. Now she watched her own family, and she recognized the signs. 3 weeks earlier, she had found Kato sitting alone in the dark dining room. The lights were off. Only the refrigerator hummed. He had not realized she was standing there. One hand covered his eyes. A stack of unpaid bills sat beside him. The next morning he smiled as if nothing had happened. Nabintu smiled too. Neither mentioned it. A week later, Amina brought up Hope Gardens. Not immediately, not directly. The conversation arrived in pieces. A television advertisement for senior care, a story about someone's grandmother, a comment about professional assistants, then finally the name. Hope Gardens, a nursing home 20 kilometers away. The words hung in the room. Nobody argued. Nobody raised their voice. That somehow made it harder. Now, as the car rolled toward the facility, Kato finally cleared his throat. "Just for a few weeks, Mama." Nabintu nodded. "I know. We need time to sort things out. I know. We'll visit." Again she nodded. The traffic light turned green. The car moved forward. Kato swallowed. His fingers remained tight around the steering wheel. Because even as he spoke, part of him knew he was asking his mother to believe something he could not fully guarantee. Amina turned around slightly. "You'll have nurses there, activities, friends." Nabintu smiled. The smile reached her eyes, not because she believed everything would be easy, because she understood what Amina was trying to do. Amina was trying to make the road shorter. Outside the window, banana trees blurred past. Nabintu looked at them quietly. She remembered another road many years ago, a dirt road, a bicycle, a little boy named Kato sitting on the crossbar while she pedaled to school every morning. His shoes had been too large. His socks never matched. Every few minutes he would ask how much farther. She always gave the same answer: "We'll get there." Eventually they always did. The car reached Hope Gardens shortly before noon. The nursing home stood behind a long stone wall covered with flowering vines. A blue metal gate guarded the entrance. Beyond it sat several low buildings painted cream and green. The grass had been recently cut. Rows of red flowers lined the walkways. Everything looked clean. Everything looked organized. Everything looked temporary. A staff member greeted them warmly. Forms were signed. Documents were reviewed. Questions were answered. The process moved efficiently, almost too efficiently. Soon a young attendant lifted Nabintu's brown bag. She immediately reached for it. "I'll carry that." The attendant smiled and returned it. Nabintu held the bag close against her chest. The notebook remained inside. The sweater remained inside. The yellow bracelet remained inside. Things small enough to carry, things too large to leave behind. As paperwork continued, a child laughed somewhere outside. The sound drifted through an open window. Without thinking, Nabintu reached into her pocket and touched the bracelet. For a moment she imagined Tendo, only 4 years old, running across the yard, asking endless questions, holding toy cars in both hands. The image stayed only a second. Then the moment passed. The staff member finished the last page. Everything was ready. Kato stood. Amina stood. Nabintu stood. There was no ceremony, no speech, only a few simple hugs. Kato embraced his mother first. The hug lasted a little longer than expected. When he stepped back, he looked as though he wanted to say something, several somethings. Instead, he nodded. "I'll call tomorrow." Nabintu placed her hand on his shoulder, the same shoulder she had once carried asleep from a bus station after a long journey. "Drive safely," that was all. Amina hugged her next. Her perfume smelled faintly of jasmine. Neither woman spoke. Neither needed to. Then Kato and Amina walked toward the parking area. Nabintu remained standing near the entrance. The brown bag hung from one arm. A breeze moved through the flowering vines. Kato opened the car door, paused, looked back. For 1 second their eyes met across the courtyard. Then he climbed inside. The engine started. The car rolled away, slowly at first, then faster, then beyond the gate. A staff member gently touched Nabintu's elbow and offered to show her the room. Nabintu nodded. Together they walked forward. Behind them the blue metal gate swung shut. The latch clicked into place. The sound was small, very small, but it remained in the air long after the car had disappeared beyond the road. The first Sunday arrived quietly. At exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Nabintu walked to the telephone mounted on the wall beside the reception desk. The phone was cream-colored. One corner was chipped. A small piece of clear tape held the receiver cord together. She carried a folded piece of paper with Kato's number written neatly in blue ink. The receptionist smiled. "Calling family." Nabintu nodded. The number had not changed in years. She knew it by heart. Still, she looked at the paper before dialing, 1 digit at a time. The line rang, once, twice, 3 times, then silence, no answer. Nabintu thanked the receptionist and returned to her room. Nothing dramatic happened, no tears, no disappointment visible on her face. Only the sound of her shoes against the hallway floor. The following Sunday she tried again, then the Sunday after that, then another. Weeks became months. Months became years. Every Sunday at 4 o'clock, Nabintu stood beside the same telephone. Every Sunday at 4 o'clock, she dialed the same number. Every Sunday at 4 o'clock, the result remained the same. Eventually, the calls no longer rang. A recorded message answered immediately. The number was unavailable. The number could not be reached. The number had been blocked. Nabintu listened to the message all the way to the end each time. Then she placed the receiver back gently, never abruptly, never angrily, as if someone might still be listening on the other side. Hope Gardens settled into routine. Morning tea at 7, breakfast at 8, medication rounds at 9, lunch at noon, afternoon activities, dinner before sunset. The schedule rarely changed. Yet within those routines lived dozens of small worlds. Some residents waited for visitors every weekend. Some stopped waiting. Some spoke constantly about children who never came. Others never mentioned family at all. Among them lived Mzee Okello. He occupied the room across from Nabintu's. He was tall despite his age. One shoulder leaned slightly lower than the other. A walking stick made from polished mahogany never left his side. Every morning he sat beneath a jacaranda tree near the courtyard fountain. Every morning he claimed he was waiting for a government minister. Nobody knew whether that had ever been true. One Tuesday, Nabintu brought him tea. The cup rattled slightly against the saucer. Mzee Okello accepted it with both hands. "The minister is late again," he said. Nabintu looked toward the empty gate. "Traffic must be terrible." He nodded seriously. "Very terrible." The conversation ended there. Neither corrected the other. Across the courtyard worked Nurse Wanjiru. She had arrived from Kenya several years earlier. Her uniform was always spotless. A silver watch hung loosely from her wrist. Unlike many younger nurses, she listened more than she spoke. She noticed details, the way Nabintu folded blankets, the way Nabintu organized medicine trays, the way residents seemed calmer whenever she sat beside them. One afternoon, Wanjiru entered the recreation room carrying medication records. She stopped. Nabintu was helping 3 residents sort their pills. Blue tablets in one compartment, white tablets in another, half tablets carefully separated. "You're working again," Wanjiru said. Nabintu smiled. "I'm only helping." The younger nurse laughed softly. "You say that every day." Yet everyone knew it was true. Nabintu never acted like she worked there. She simply filled empty spaces whenever she saw them. A loose bandage, a forgotten medication, a confused resident searching for a room. Small things, very small things, the kind of things people often miss. Months passed, then more months. The notebook inside Nabintu's brown bag slowly filled with names. Blood pressure readings, medication reminders, birthday dates, favorite foods, emergency contacts. No one asked her to keep records. She did it anyway. The habit belonged to another life. Some habits survive retirement, some survive grief, some survive loneliness. Every night before bed, Nabintu opened a small metal tin inside her drawer. The tin contained ginger candies, orange wrappers twisted at both ends. She rarely ate them. Instead, she counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, then closed the lid. The candies were for Tendo, when he visited, if he visited. The distinction mattered. On rainy evenings, thunder rolled across Kampala. Water tapped against windows. Residents gathered indoors. Stories traveled through hallways. One such evening, Mama Atom entered the common room carrying a clipboard. She managed Hope Gardens with strict efficiency. Rules mattered to her. Schedules mattered to her. Inspections mattered to her. Problems did not, or rather, she feared them. Because every problem carried paperwork. Every paperwork carried risk. And every risk threatened the nursing home's future. "Nabintu," she said one night, "yes, you should stop spending so much time helping everyone." Nabintu looked up from a knitting basket. "Why? Because you're a resident." A pause, then another. Finally, Mama Atom added quietly, "You deserve to rest." The statement lingered. Rest, an interesting word. Nabintu had spent most of her life caring for people. Some habits become identities. Removing them feels like removing skin. I rest when people are okay, Nabintu replied. Mama Atim shook her head, not because she disagreed, because she understood. That was somehow harder. 3 years passed. The calendar pages continued disappearing. Residents arrived. Residents left. The jacaranda tree grew taller. The fountain pump broke and was repaired twice. Nurse Wanjiru gained a few gray hairs. Mzee Okello continued waiting for his imaginary minister. And every Sunday at 4 o'clock, Nabintu continued walking to the telephone. Not because she expected an answer, not because she believed the number would suddenly work. She called because Tendo was growing somewhere. Another birthday, another school year, another pair of shoes, another centimeter taller. The calls were the closest thing she had to watching that happen. One Sunday afternoon, after listening to the automated message, once again Nabintu returned to her room. Sunlight stretched across the floorboards. The air smelled faintly of furniture polish. She opened her drawer, removed the metal candy tin, counted the ginger candies. Then she opened another drawer. Inside lay dozens of envelopes. Every envelope addressed to the same child, Tendo Samanda. Some contained birthday cards, some contained short letters. Some contained stories about birds nesting near the courtyard. Others described Mzee Okello's endless wait for the minister. She never knew whether the letters would reach him. Still she wrote them. Still she folded them carefully. Still she placed stamps in the corner. Because somewhere beyond the nursing home's walls lived a boy who once laughed whenever she made lion noises. A boy whose yellow bracelet remained inside her brown bag. A boy who was becoming someone new each year. And she had no way to see it happen. That evening, rain began falling just before sunset. Drops struck the roof in steady rhythm. Nabintu sat beside her window. The yellow bracelet rested in her palm. The cartoon lion's missing ear caught the fading light. Far away beyond roads and traffic and 3 years of silence, a 7-year-old boy named Tendo was running across a school playground. Neither knew how quickly their worlds were moving toward each other. The bracelet remained in Nabintu's hand as darkness settled against the glass. At 7 years old, Tendo Samanda could name every football player on his favorite team. He could solve multiplication problems faster than many children in his class. He could build entire cities from cardboard boxes and bottle caps. But he could not remember his grandmother's face. Memory had left behind only fragments. A voice, a laugh, the smell of soap, a pair of warm hands buttoning his sweater. The details no longer connected to a person, only to feelings. Children often lose memories without realizing it. They simply wake up one day and discover certain rooms inside their minds have gone dark. Tendo never questioned it much. Life kept moving. School, friends, homework, football, birthdays, new shoes, new teachers, the years filled themselves. Meanwhile, the empty space where Nabintu once stood remained empty. One Saturday morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor of the Samanda home. Amina stood near the stove preparing tea. The kettle hissed. Slices of bread browned inside a toaster. Tendo sat at the table drawing racing cars on the back of an old receipt. His tongue poked slightly from the corner of his mouth whenever he concentrated. Kato entered wearing a wrinkled work shirt. His phone remained pressed against his ear. A client, another problem, another delayed payment, another promise to call back later. The conversation ended. He dropped into a chair. The chair creaked. Amina slid a cup of tea toward him. Neither spoke immediately. The silence between them no longer felt unusual. Marriage often changes shape under pressure, not through dramatic arguments, through small omissions, questions left unasked, worries left unnamed. Across the table, Tendo suddenly looked up. "Dad?" Kato rubbed his forehead. "Yes. Do I have a grandmother?" The question arrived unexpectedly. Like a stone through still water, the kitchen became quiet. Amina's hand paused above the sugar bowl. Kato stared at his son for a second too long. "Of course you do." Where is she? Kato reached for his tea. She lives far away. How far? Very far. Tendo considered this answer seriously. Children often do. Then they asked the next question. Does she know me? Amina lowered her eyes. The kettle clicked softly as it cooled. Kato took a sip before answering. Yes. Have I met her? Another pause, another sip. You were very little. Tendo nodded slowly. The explanation seemed sufficient for the moment. Children sometimes accept answers adults know are incomplete, not because the answers satisfy them, because they trust the people giving them. The conversation ended, yet the question lingered in the room long after breakfast. That afternoon, Amina opened a drawer in their bedroom. Beneath old receipts and utility bills rested a framed photograph. Dust covered part of the glass. She wiped it away with her sleeve. The image showed 3 generations standing together. Nabintu, Kato, baby Tendo, a birthday celebration from years earlier, a cake decorated with blue frosting, plastic balloons tied to chairs, everyone smiling at something outside the camera's view. Amina stared at the picture, then placed it back inside the drawer, face down. The drawer closed. The sound echoed louder than expected. Life continued. Weeks passed. School resumed. The rainy season arrived. Tendo spent afternoons splashing through puddles despite repeated warnings. His laughter often reached the street before he did. To neighbors he appeared healthy, strong, energetic, a normal 7-year-old boy. Most days that was true. Most days. Years earlier, doctors had discovered a mild congenital heart condition, nothing immediately life-threatening, nothing requiring major intervention, only monitoring, periodic checkups, observation, words that sounded reassuring. As time passed, those appointments became less frequent. The condition rarely interfered with daily life. Eventually, concern softened into habit. Then habit softened into assumption, and assumption can be dangerous. One evening, Tendo returned from football practice unusually tired. His shoes dragged slightly against the floor. Amina noticed. What happened? Nothing. You don't look like nothing. He shrugged. My chest feels funny. The statement lasted only a moment. By dinner, he seemed normal again. The concern passed. A week later, he became short of breath climbing stairs. 2 days after that, he complained of dizziness while running. Then normal again, then another episode. Small signs, tiny signs, the sort of details Nabintu would have written inside her notebook immediately, the sort of details nobody else connected yet, not because they didn't care, because life remained crowded. Kato worked longer hours. Amina balanced household responsibilities. Bills still arrived, repairs still needed attention, problems competed for space. One evening after Tendo had gone to bed, Amina sat beside Kato on the couch. The television played quietly in the background. Neither watched it. I think we should schedule another cardiology appointment. Kato nodded. Okay. He's been getting tired. I noticed. Amina folded her hands. Do you think it's getting worse? Kato stared at the television screen. A football match flickered silently. I don't know. Neither spoke for a while. Then Amina said something unexpected. Your mother would probably notice. The room became still. The sentence remained suspended between them. Kato looked away, toward the dark window. Outside, rain tapped gently against the glass. Years earlier, he would have called Nabintu immediately. Any fever, any cough, any strange symptom. His mother always knew something. Not magic. Experience. Thousands of patients, thousands of observations. Now that instinct had nowhere to go. The silence stretched. Eventually, Amina stood and carried empty cups to the sink. The conversation ended, yet neither forgot it. 3 days later, Tendo discovered an old cardboard box while searching for markers. The box sat on a shelf inside a storage closet. Dust coated the top. The tape had partially peeled away. Curiosity did the rest. Children are experts at finding forgotten things. He opened the box. Inside lay old toys, baby clothes, greeting cards, photographs. Near the bottom rested a small white cloth. Tendo pulled it free. Blue thread formed two letters in one corner. NN. The stitching had faded with age. "What does this mean?" he called. Amina appeared in the doorway. The moment she saw the cloth, something flickered across her face. Recognition, memory, regret, perhaps all three. She took the cloth carefully. "Where did you find that?" "In the box." "What were you doing in there?" "Looking for markers." Amina smiled faintly, the kind of smile adults use when buying time. "It belonged to someone." "Who?" She hesitated, then answered truthfully, "Your grandmother." Tendo looked at the cloth, then at her. "The one who lives far away." "Yes." "Can I meet her someday?" Amina's fingers tightened around the embroidered corner. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the city. The sound arrived several seconds after the lightning. She looked toward the hallway, toward the living room where Kato sat working on his laptop, then back at her son. "I don't know." It was the most honest answer she had given in years. That night, after everyone went to sleep, the small cloth remained on the dining table. Moonlight slipped through the window. The embroidered letters NN glowed faintly beneath the silver light. Upstairs, Tendo slept peacefully. Far away at Hope Gardens, Nabintu sat beside her window, holding a yellow bracelet. Neither knew that the distance separating them had already begun to narrow. The cloth remained on the table as another storm gathered beyond the horizon. The day began with singing. Bright paper decorations hung from classroom walls. Teachers moved chairs across the assembly hall. Children practiced dance routines beneath colorful banners. At St. Mary's Primary School in Kampala, excitement floated through the air long before sunrise. It was Cultural Celebration Day. Parents would attend. Students would perform. Certificates would be handed out. Photographs would be taken. For 7-year-old Tendo Samanda, it felt like one of the most important days of the year. He woke before his alarm. His school uniform had already been pressed. His shoes had already been polished. Amina found him standing in front of the bathroom mirror, rehearsing a speech. One hand rested against his chest. The other pointed dramatically at his reflection. She laughed. "You're ready to become president." Tendo grinned. "Maybe." Kato was already dressed for work. He planned to stop by the school for the performance before heading to a client meeting. The morning felt normal, comfortably normal. The kind of morning people rarely remember because nothing appears unusual. The kind of morning that later returns in fragments. A shoe by the door, a cup left in the sink. A joke nobody knew would become important. Before leaving, Tendo grabbed his backpack, then paused. "Dad," Kato looked up. "Yes." "Will you stay for my whole speech?" "I wouldn't miss it." Tendo smiled. The answer seemed enough. Outside, the city moved beneath a sky streaked with thin white clouds. Traffic flowed steadily. Street vendors arranged fruit beneath umbrellas. Motorcycle engines hummed. Life continued. Meanwhile, 20 kilometers away, Nabintu sat beneath the jacaranda tree at Hope Gardens. A small blood pressure cuff squeezed her arm. Nurse Wanjiru watched the monitor. The numbers appeared, then appeared again, slightly higher, then again, still elevated. Nabintu noticed immediately. "You don't need to look worried," she said. "I'm not worried." "You are." Wanjiru adjusted the cuff. A smile briefly appeared. "You were always impossible to fool." Nabintu laughed softly. The nurse checked the readings once more. The numbers remained stubborn. Nothing dangerous, nothing dramatic. Still enough to recommend evaluation. "We should have the doctor look at this. It's only stress." "Then let a doctor confirm that." Nabintu folded the cuff carefully before handing it back. Outside, purple jacaranda blossoms drifted through the courtyard. One landed beside her shoe. She watched it spin across the pavement. At nearly the same moment, Tendo stood backstage at school. Rows of parents filled folding chairs. Teachers moved between students, making final adjustments. Someone pinned a paper flag to his shirt. Someone else fixed his collar. Children whispered, laughed, fidgeted. The program began. Songs, Poems, traditional dances. Applause echoed through the hall. When Tendo's turn arrived, he stepped onto the stage confidently. The microphone stood slightly too high. A teacher adjusted it. The audience smiled. Kato sat near the middle row, Amina beside him. Both held phones ready to record. Tendo cleared his throat, began speaking. His voice carried across the room, strong, clear, steady. The first minute passed perfectly. Then something changed, not visibly at first. A slight pause, a small hesitation, the kind people often ignore. Tendo blinked, lost his place, found it again, continued. The audience remained unaware. Then he pressed one hand against his chest, only briefly. The movement lasted less than a second. Amina noticed. Mothers often notice. Her smile faded slightly. On stage, Tendo resumed speaking. Another sentence, another breath, another pause. The microphone crackled softly. Then suddenly the room tilted. At least that was how it felt to him. The lights blurred, the audience stretched into strange shapes. Sound drifted farther away. His next word never arrived. The microphone emitted a sharp burst of static. Tendo collapsed. The hall froze. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then everything moved at once. Teachers rushed forward, parents stood, chairs scraped across the floor. Someone shouted for an ambulance, someone called emergency services. Amina was already running, Kato close behind. On stage, Tendo's small body lay motionless beneath the bright lights. The paper flag remained pinned to his shirt. The audience's applause had vanished. In its place came instructions, footsteps, phones ringing, voices overlapping. The countdown had begun. Across Kampala, traffic suddenly mattered. Distance suddenly mattered. Minutes suddenly mattered. 48 minutes. That was the estimate provided by emergency responders. 48 minutes to get him to Malago National Referral Hospital and stabilize the crisis developing inside his chest. 48 minutes, not an hour, not a day. 48 minutes. The ambulance arrived. Doors opened. Equipment appeared. Tendo was loaded inside. The vehicle pulled away with sirens screaming. Kato and Amina followed in their car. Meanwhile, at Hope Gardens, arrangements were being made for Nabintu's evaluation. Nothing urgent, nothing alarming. Just precaution. Nurse Wanjiru accompanied her. The facility vehicle departed shortly after noon. The trip remained uneventful. Neither woman knew another emergency vehicle was racing toward the same destination. Mulago Hospital stood busy as always. Stretchers rolled through hallways. Phones rang continuously. Announcements echoed overhead. Doctors hurried between departments. The emergency entrance received patients from across the city. When Nabintu arrived, she noticed the familiar rhythm immediately. Hospitals possess their own language. The squeak of wheels, the beeping of monitors, the smell of disinfectant, the hurried footsteps. Even after retirement, she recognized every sound. Registration took only minutes. Nurse Wanjiru completed paperwork while Nabintu waited near a row of plastic chairs. Nearby, paramedics pushed a stretcher through automatic doors. Several nurses followed. A doctor called instructions. The scene lasted only seconds. Yet something caught Nabintu's attention. Not the child, not the face, not even the voices. A name. Tendo Semanda. The words reached her through the noise. She looked up. At first, she thought she had imagined it. Thousands of patients pass through Malago each year. Names repeated. Coincidences happened. Still something tightened inside her chest. The stretcher moved quickly. Nurses surrounded it. Equipment blocked her view. Then for one brief moment an arm slipped free from the blanket. A small wrist. A hospital identification band. And beneath it, a yellow plastic bracelet. A cartoon lion. One ear missing. Nabintu stood so quickly that her chair tipped backward. The crash startled nearby patients. Wanjiru turned around. Nabintu. But Nabintu was already moving. The bracelet could not be there. It was impossible. Her own hand instinctively reached into the pocket of her sweater, empty. for the first time in 3 years. Because earlier that morning she had removed the bracelet while changing clothes and placed it inside her brown bag. Yet the image remained. The lion, the missing ear, the same bracelet, the same one she had picked up beneath Kato's car seat 3 years ago. The same one she had carried every day since. The stretcher disappeared through emergency doors. Nabintu hurried forward, faster than anyone expected, faster than Wanjiru thought possible. "Nabintu, wait!" She didn't. The hallway stretched before her. Doctors rushed past. Voices echoed. Monitors beeped. Then another detail surfaced. A glimpse of a forehead, a small scar near the eyebrow, tiny, almost invisible, except Nabintu remembered exactly how it happened. A fall from a tricycle at age 3. 3 stitches. One frightened little boy. And suddenly there was no uncertainty left. No coincidence, no possibility of mistake. Her grandson was behind those doors. The grandson she had not seen for 3 years. The grandson whose voice she could no longer remember clearly. The grandson whose birthday cards filled an entire drawer. Somewhere beyond the emergency entrance, a monitor continued counting seconds. Nabintu tightened her grip on the brown cloth bag. The zipper slipped open. The bag fell. The old notebook spilled across the polished floor. Pages scattered beneath the hospital lights. The notebook hit the floor first. Then loose pages followed. Blood pressure notes, medication schedules, names written in careful handwriting, dates stretching back years. The papers scattered across the polished hospital corridor like leaves caught in sudden wind. Nabintu barely noticed. Her eyes remained fixed on the emergency room doors. Beyond them stood the grandson she had not seen in 3 years. Beyond them, time was moving faster than anyone wanted. Nurse Wanjiru hurried forward and gathered the fallen pages. Nabintu. No answer. Nabintu. Still none. The older woman had already reached the nurse's station. A young receptionist looked up. "Ma'am, the child who just arrived." The receptionist glanced toward the emergency department. "Which child?" "Tendo Semanda." The name felt unfamiliar on Nabintu's lips, not because she had forgotten it, because she had not spoken it aloud in so long. The receptionist checked a computer screen. A few seconds passed. Then her expression changed. "The patient is in critical assessment." Nabintu nodded. "I need to speak to the doctor." "I'm sorry, family members must wait outside." The words were routine, professional, automatic. They would have ended most conversations, not this one. Nabintu stepped aside, not arguing, not demanding, just watching, observing. The habit of a nurse never completely disappears. People speak with words. Hospitals speak with movement. Within moments, she noticed details. The frequency of staff entering the room. The urgency in their pace. The equipment being requested. The look exchanged between 2 nurses near the medication cart. Details, small details, but together they painted a picture, and the picture worried her. Inside emergency room 3, Dr. Namara Naluli reviewed the incoming chart. 39 years old, sharp eyes, steady hands, the kind of physician who preferred facts to assumptions. She scanned the information quickly. Male, age 7, congenital heart condition, collapse during physical exertion, respiratory distress, possible cardiac complication, vital signs unstable. Around her, nurses moved efficiently. Monitors beeped, equipment rattled, instructions passed from one person to another. One of the nurses prepared medication, another adjusted oxygen support. The scene was controlled, yet beneath that control sat urgency. The clock mattered. Every minute mattered. Outside, Nabintu watched through a narrow glass panel. Only fragments were visible. A shoulder, a monitor screen, a moving silhouette. Enough. Then something caught her attention. One nurse reached for a medication tray, a small vial, a familiar label. Nabintu frowned. Her mind immediately traveled backward. Years, perhaps 4 years. A clinic visit. A frightened toddler sitting on an examination table. Tiny fingers gripping her sleeve. Blue lips after a previous reaction. A cardiologist discussing precautions. Specific precautions, very specific ones. The memory returned whole. Not because she wanted it to, because nurses remember patterns, particularly dangerous ones. Her hand tightened around the notebook. The pages crinkled slightly. Inside the emergency room, the vial remained on the tray. Nabintu looked again, then again. The same concern returned. Perhaps she was mistaken. Age changes memory. Time changes certainty. Still, something felt wrong. Nearby, Mama Atom finally arrived from Hope Gardens. She had insisted on following after learning Nabintu remained at the hospital. The nursing home manager walked quickly through the corridor, clutching her handbag. Nabintu, the older woman turned. You should sit down. No, you haven't even seen a doctor yet. No, Mama Atom sighed. The response did not surprise her. Few things surprised her anymore, particularly where Nabintu was concerned. The manager followed her gaze toward the emergency room. You know the child? A pause. My grandson. The answer hung quietly between them. Mama Atom blinked. For the first time since arriving, she truly understood why Nabintu refused to move. At nearly the same moment, Kato and Amina burst through the hospital entrance. Their arrival carried the energy of people running ahead of fear, faces pale, breathing uneven, clothes disheveled. Amina's hands trembled as she approached the reception desk. Questions came rapidly, updates, information, anything, everything. Neither noticed Nabintu, not yet. Too many people, too much panic, too much distance compressed into one hallway. Inside emergency room 3, another discussion began. A nurse handed Dr. Nalule updated records. The doctor reviewed them, then frowned. Certain details appeared incomplete. Previous specialist reports were missing. Medication history remained unclear. Some information had not transferred electronically. Not unusual, but inconvenient, especially now. A treatment decision approached, and incomplete information always creates risk. Outside the room, Nabintu recognized the signs immediately. Questions were being asked, answers were missing. The old instinct returned stronger, not emotional, practical. The way a nurse thinks when seconds matter. She approached the station again. This time, a different nurse stood there. I need to speak with Dr. Nalule. The nurse shook her head. The doctor is busy. It concerns the patient. Are you family? Nabintu opened her mouth, then stopped. The answer was not simple. Family. The word carried 3 years of silence, 3 years of blocked calls, 3 years of unopened letters. Still. Yes. The nurse hesitated. Before she could respond, another voice interrupted. What's happening? Dr. Nalule had stepped into the corridor. Her expression remained calm, focused, professional. Nabintu immediately recognized competence. Dr. Nalule immediately recognized determination. Neither woman wasted time. I believe you're treating Tendo Samanda. The doctor's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, I'm his grandmother. A brief silence followed. Dr. Nalule glanced toward the waiting area, toward Kato and Amina speaking with staff. Then back. His parents are here. I know. The response surprised her. You know, I haven't spoken to them yet. The doctor studied her carefully. Years of medicine had taught her something valuable. People reveal themselves quickly during emergencies. Some exaggerate, some panic, some interfere. Nabintu did none of those things. Instead, she pointed toward the treatment room. The medication you're considering. Dr. Nalule's attention sharpened. What about it? Nabintu took a breath. Tendo had an adverse response years ago during a cardiac evaluation. The doctor's expression changed slightly, only slightly. Enough. What kind of response? Cyanosis, breathing complications. His lips turned blue. Dr. Nalule immediately looked toward the chart. The information was not there, not in any accessible record. How do you know I was with him? Another pause. The hallway seemed quieter suddenly. Around them, hospital life continued. Stretchers rolled past, phones rang, announcements echoed overhead. Yet the conversation narrowed everything. Dr. Nalul folded her arms. "Do you have documentation?" Nabintu lifted the notebook. The old cover had faded, corners curled, pages yellowed. Inside rested years of observations, notes, appointments, dosages, specialist recommendations, things she never stopped recording, even after moving to Hope Gardens, even after losing contact, because some people stop being caregivers, others never do. Dr. Nalule accepted the notebook. Carefully, page after page revealed dates, symptoms, follow-up visits, medication reactions, detailed observation, nothing dramatic, only facts, the kind of facts physicians trust. The doctor's eyes moved faster, then slower, then she stopped. One entry, specific, relevant, important, very important. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed completely. Not disbelief, respect. Why wasn't this information included in the chart? Nabintu glanced toward the waiting area where Kato stood with Amina. Neither had heard the conversation. Neither knew what was unfolding. "I don't know." The answer carried no accusation, only truth. Dr. Nalule nodded once, then turned toward the emergency room. Orders followed immediately, new instructions, new assessments, additional verification. The treatment plan shifted, not dramatically, but enough. Sometimes survival depends on enormous interventions. Sometimes survival depends on one detail written years earlier in fading blue ink. As the medical team adjusted course, Mama Atem stepped closer. She looked uneasy. Hospitals made her uneasy. Responsibility made her uneasy. Risk made her uneasy. "Nabintu," she whispered, "maybe you should let the professionals handle this." The older woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the emergency room doors, watched nurses move, watched doctors confer, watched the clock advance. Then she spoke softly. "I am." Beyond the glass, Dr. Nalule reopened the notebook. A loose paper slipped free. The page fluttered slightly beneath the spinning ceiling fan. The loose paper drifted from the notebook and landed near Dr. Nalul's shoes. She bent down and picked it up. It was not a medical report, not exactly. The paper had once been part of an envelope. The edges were worn, the fold marks were deep. Across the front appeared a child's name, written in careful blue handwriting, Tendo Samanda. The doctor glanced at Nabintu. "You keep these with you?" Nabintu nodded. "Most of them." The doctor handed the paper back without another question. Then she disappeared behind the emergency room doors. The conversation ended. The consequences did not. Across the corridor, Kato finally noticed the familiar figure standing near the nurse's station. At first, he thought exhaustion was playing tricks on him. Hospitals do strange things to perception. Fear narrows attention. Stress blurs certainty. For a moment, he simply stared. The sweater, the posture, the brown cloth bag, the silver strands of hair gathered neatly at the back of her head. His mother. The realization arrived slowly, then all at once. 3 years disappeared, not emotionally, not completely, but visually, because there she was, real, standing 20 steps away. Kato stopped walking. Amina followed his gaze. Her hand immediately moved to her mouth. Neither spoke. What words could possibly fit inside a hallway like this? 3 years, 3 birthdays, 3 Christmas seasons, 3 years of silence. The distance between them measured only 20 steps. The real distance measured much more. Nabintu saw them too. Her eyes settled on Kato, then on Amina, then back to Kato. No accusation appeared there, no visible anger, only recognition. The sort of recognition people have when opening a book they once loved and finding it exactly where they left it. Nobody moved. Then Nurse Wanjiru quietly stepped away. Mama Atem found a reason to examine paperwork elsewhere. The corridor seemed to create space around them. Eventually, Kato approached. One step, then another. His shoes squeaked softly against the polished floor. When he finally stopped, neither knew how to begin. The first sentence belonged to him. Mama. A simple word, one he had not spoken directly to her in years. Nabintu nodded. Kato. Nothing more. The names themselves carried enough weight. Amina stood beside him. Her fingers twisted together. She wanted to say something. Apologize, perhaps. Explain, perhaps. Neither felt possible. Instead, she whispered, "How are you?" The question sounded strangely small inside a hospital emergency corridor. Nabintu considered it, then answered honestly, "My blood pressure seems determined to cause trouble." For the first time, a faint smile appeared, brief, fragile, gone almost immediately. Yet it helped, not much, enough. A door opened nearby. A nurse stepped out carrying forms. The interruption broke the silence. "The family of Tendo Semanda." All three turned. The nurse approached. "We need additional medical history." Kato moved forward immediately. "I'll help." The nurse nodded, then began asking questions, routine questions, necessary questions, yet each answer exposed a gap. Previous reactions to medication. Kato wasn't sure. Exact date of cardiac assessment. He couldn't remember. Specialist recommendations. Possibly an old record somewhere. The nurse continued. Question after question. The uncertainty accumulated, not because Kato didn't care, because life had happened. Years had passed. Information had scattered. Appointments had been attended by different people. Documents misplaced. Details forgotten. Across from him stood Nabintu, listening quietly. Then, when asked, answering. Exact medication reaction. Approximate dates, symptoms, family history, follow-up recommendations, specific observations. The nurse's pen moved steadily across the page. Kato watched, and for the first time that day, something sharp settled inside his chest. Not guilt, not yet. Recognition. Recognition of how much his mother still knew. Recognition of how much she had continued carrying despite being absent from their lives. Or perhaps because she had never truly been absent. The form eventually reached the final page. The nurse thanked them and left. Silence returned. This time it felt different, less awkward, more honest. Nearby, a clock ticked above the reception desk. Each second seemed unusually loud. Tick, tick, tick. Then Amina spoke. "They changed part of the treatment plan because of your notes." Nabintu looked down at the notebook resting on her lap. The doctors made the decision, but they needed the information. Another pause. Nabintu nodded once. Nothing more. Meanwhile, inside emergency room 3, Dr. Nalul reviewed the revised plan with her team. New assessments confirmed the concern. The earlier medication choice would not have been ideal, not catastrophic, but risky. Risk mattered, especially today, especially now. The doctor's respect for the elderly woman outside continued growing, not because she had challenged medical authority, because she had preserved information others had lost. Outside, Kato lowered himself into a plastic chair. The chair flexed slightly beneath his weight. Across from him sat Nabintu. The distance between the chairs measured less than 2 meters, yet neither attempted to shorten it. Some bridges cannot be crossed in one conversation. Amina sat beside Kato. The corridor lights reflected faintly on the floor. Patients passed. Staff hurried by. Life continued around them. Then Kato noticed something sticking out from the notebook. An envelope, old, yellowed, addressed in blue ink. His eyes narrowed. Another envelope appeared beneath it. Then another. Dozens, perhaps more. Tendo. Nabintu followed his gaze. The envelopes remained visible. She made no effort to hide them. Letters. Kato stared. For him, yes. The answer landed quietly, yet it seemed louder than anything else said that afternoon. Amina leaned forward. Letters. Nabintu nodded. Birthday cards, stories, small things. Kato swallowed. When, over the years, the clock continued ticking, neither Kato nor Amina spoke. Eventually, Kato asked the obvious question. Why didn't we receive them? A shadow crossed Nabintu's face. Not anger, memory. The envelopes came back. Kato frowned. What do you mean? She reached into the notebook and removed one. The envelope had several postal markings. A red stamp crossed the front. Return to sender. Another carried the same mark. And another. And another. One after another, years compressed into paper. Kato stared at them. The evidence sat plainly in his hands. No drama, no accusation, just facts. Amina looked away, because suddenly she remembered something. The old mailbox outside their previous rental house. The move, the change of address, the months of chaos, the letters that never arrived, the letters nobody knew existed, or perhaps nobody looked hard enough to find. The realization settled heavily. Nabintu spoke softly. I kept writing anyway. Nobody answered immediately, because there was nothing useful to say. Across the corridor, emergency room doors opened once more. Everyone stood instantly. The movement happened automatically, a reflex. A doctor emerged, not Dr. Nalule, another physician. He delivered an update. Tendo remained critical. The team was stabilizing him. More interventions might be required. They were not finished yet. The words provided hope, but not certainty. After the doctor left, Kato sat again. This time he covered his face with both hands, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, as if the weight of several years had suddenly shifted. Nabintu watched him, the same way she had watched him as a child struggling with mathematics homework, the same way she had watched him after his first heartbreak, the same way she had watched him sitting alone beside unpaid bills years earlier. A mother notices when her child is carrying something heavy, even when the child becomes a man. Neither spoke, neither needed to. Above them, the corridor lights hummed softly. Beside them rested the stack of returned letters, and on a nearby clipboard, a consent form waited for a signature no one had yet managed to write. The consent form remained on the clipboard. Black letters, white paper, empty signature line. Kato stared at it as if the paper had become a locked door. Dr. Nalule stood before him speaking carefully. Tendo had been stabilized briefly. That word did not offer comfort. His condition had worsened again. His blood pressure was unstable. His oxygen levels were not holding. The team needed to move quickly. A procedure was being prepared. Blood support might be required. The hospital blood bank was already searching. The words moved through the corridor, one after another, each one precise. Kato heard them. Amina heard them. Nabintu heard the spaces between them. She heard what was not yet said. Time was thinning. Dr. Nalule looked at the family. We need updated consent now. Kato took the pen. His fingers did not close properly around it. The pen slipped slightly. Amina placed one hand against his back. He signed. Not with confidence, with necessity. The nurse carried the form away. For several minutes nobody spoke. The corridor seemed to lengthen. People passed with trays, files, wheelchairs, blankets. A child cried in another room. Somewhere a woman prayed in Luganda under her breath. The hospital kept moving because hospitals always keep moving, even when one family stops breathing normally. Nabintu sat with her notebook on her lap. The returned letters had been tucked back inside. The brown cloth bag rested beside her feet. A corner of her faded sweater hung from the open zipper. Amina looked at it. The sweater was the same one Nabintu had worn 3 years earlier. She remembered folding it into the bag. She remembered thinking the bag looked too small for a whole life. Now that same bag sat beneath hospital lights, unchanged, as if waiting. A nurse emerged from the emergency doors. Family of Tendo Semanda. All three stood. Dr. Nalule followed behind her. Her face remained controlled, but her pace told the truth. We have a problem. Kato's hand tightened around the chair beside him. Dr. Nalule continued. Tendo may need an urgent blood transfusion. His type is uncommon, and the immediate supply here is limited. We are contacting nearby facilities, but that may take time. How much time? Amina asked. The doctor paused, too short a pause. More than we would like. Kato looked from the doctor to Amina, then back. What do? We test immediate family first. Within minutes, blood samples were taken. Kato, Amina, Nabintu. The tubes stood in a tray, each labeled carefully. Red caps, white stickers, black ink. The smallness of them seemed strange, so much depending on such little glass containers. They waited. Waiting inside a hospital is not empty time. It fills itself. With footsteps, with alarms, with doors opening and closing, with eyes lifting every time someone in a white coat appears. Kato walked in short lines. 3 steps one way, 3 steps back. Amina sat without blinking. Nabintu remained still. Her hands rested on her knees. Only her thumb moved, pressing against the seam of her skirt. Again. Nurse Wanjiru sat beside her. You should drink water. Nabintu nodded but did not move. Wanjiru brought a cup anyway. Nabintu accepted it, held it. The water trembled slightly. Then Dr. Nalule returned. Everyone stood. The doctor looked first at Kato, then Amina, then Nabintu. We have one compatible donor. Kato already knew, before she said it. Something in the doctor's eyes had moved toward his mother. Nabintu. The name entered the corridor softly. No one reacted at first. Then Kato shook his head. No. Dr. Nalule lifted one hand gently. We still need to complete safety checks. No. His voice came sharper this time, not angry, frightened. She's old. She came here because her blood pressure was high. We are aware. You can't take blood from her. We won't do anything unsafe. You said his condition is critical. Yes. Then find someone else. The doctor did not answer immediately, because doctors know that fear often speaks before reason arrives. Amina stood beside Kato, her face turned toward Nabintu. Nabintu looked at her son. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she reached down and opened the brown cloth bag. From inside she removed the faded sweater, the old notebook, a folded white cloth. Then from the small inner pocket she took out the yellow bracelet, the one with the cartoon lion, the missing ear. The bracelet looked smaller under the hospital lights, almost ordinary, a child's forgotten thing. Nabintu placed it on her palm. Kato stared. His breath stopped for a second. You kept that? Nabintu nodded. The corridor shifted backward. 3 years fell open. A silver Toyota, a blue metal gate, a 4-year-old boy crying because he did not understand why his grandmother was not coming home with them. That day, Tendo had been in the car seat behind Kato. He had worn the yellow bracelet because a nurse at a community health fair had given it to him. He liked the lion. He kept roaring at it. When they reached Hope Gardens, everything happened quickly. Forms, bags, goodbyes, promises. As Kato drove away, Tendo had fallen asleep. The bracelet slipped from his wrist. It rolled beneath the seat. Nabintu had seen it before she stepped fully out of the car. She had bent down, picked it up, held it for 1 second, then heard Kato say, "Mama, are you coming?" She placed the bracelet in her pocket, not as a souvenir, not as proof, simply because Tendo would want it back. Later, when they came, when the visit happened, when the few weeks ended, but weeks became years, and the bracelet stayed. Back in the hospital corridor, Nabintu looked at Kato. He dropped it that day. Kato lowered his eyes. The memory settled on him without mercy, yet no one struck him with it. No one needed to. Nabintu turned toward Dr. Nalule. If I pass the checks, take what you can safely take. Kato stepped forward. Mama. She did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She simply closed her fingers around the bracelet. He is a child. 3 words. Small, final. The safety checks were completed quickly. Blood pressure measured, pulse checked, medical history reviewed. Dr. Nalule did not rush where rushing would be dangerous. Nabintu sat on the examination chair while Wanjiru stood nearby. The younger nurse's face remained composed. Only her hands betrayed her. She folded and unfolded a cotton pad. Mama Autumn watched from the doorway. For once, she had no instruction to give, no rule to quote, no paperwork that could make the moment easier. Finally, Dr. Nalule nodded. "We can take a limited amount, carefully." Kato turned away, one hand against the wall. Amina stood near Nabintu. "Are you sure?" Nabintu looked at her, not coldly, not warmly, simply with the tired patience of someone who had answered this question many times in many forms. "I have been sure since I heard his name." The donation room was small, white walls, metal tray, a reclining chair with cracked blue vinyl. Nabintu sat down. A nurse wrapped a band around her arm, her skin folded softly beneath it. The vein was found, the needle prepared it. Nabintu looked toward the window. Rain had begun again, thin lines slipping down the glass. Before the needle entered, she handed the yellow bracelet to Kato. He did not take it immediately, so she placed it on the side table between them. The cartoon lion faced upward. Its missing ear pointed toward the ceiling. The needle slid in. Nabintu did not flinch. Dark red flowed into the tube, slowly, steadily. A thin line moving from old blood toward a child's waiting life. The blood moved through the tube, steady, dark, unhurried. Outside the donation room, rain continued tapping against hospital windows. Inside, nobody spoke much. The nurse monitored the collection bag. Dr. Nalul reviewed updates arriving from the emergency unit. Nurse Wanjiru stood quietly near the doorway, and Kato watched his mother, not the way adults usually watch their parents, not casually, not automatically. He watched her the way someone watches an old photograph and suddenly notices details that had always been there. The veins on her hands, the slight tremor when she adjusted her sleeve, the silver hair near her temples. 3 years had happened. He simply had not been there to see them. When the donation finished, the nurse removed the needle carefully. A cotton pad, medical tape, routine actions. Nabintu thanked her. The nurse smiled. The older woman always thanked people. Even now, even here, especially here, the blood was rushed toward the treatment area. The door closed behind it, and everyone returned to waiting. The invisible room every family enters during a medical emergency. Minutes lost their shape. Time stopped behaving normally. Sometimes 5 minutes felt like an hour. Sometimes an hour disappeared unnoticed. The corridor remained bright despite the storm outside. Overhead lights reflected against polished floors. Monitors beeped somewhere beyond closed doors. The hospital continued breathing. At one point, Nabintu drifted into a light sleep. Only briefly. Her head rested against the back of the chair. The notebook remained on her lap. The brown cloth bag sat beside her feet. The yellow bracelet remained on the table near Kato. When she opened her eyes again, the first thing she asked was not about herself, not about her blood pressure, not about the donation, not about rest. "How is Tendo?" The question came before anything else. Dr. Nalul had not returned yet. No update existed. Still, the question appeared. Kato lowered his eyes, because he remembered another time, many years earlier. A fever. He had been 8. The clinic had been overcrowded, the waiting room packed with coughing children. He remembered waking on a narrow examination bed, his mother sitting beside him, still wearing her nurse's uniform after a 12-hour shift. The first thing she asked then had been the same. "How are you feeling?" Not because she lacked other concerns, because his condition always arrived first. The memory came unexpectedly. Then another followed, a school uniform patched at the elbows, his mother sewing late at night. Another memory, a bicycle ride in heavy rain, Nabintu removing her own jacket and wrapping it around him. Another, a university acceptance letter, her hands trembling as she read it. The memories arrived one after another, not dramatic, ordinary. The dangerous thing about ordinary love is how easily people stop seeing it. Across the room, Amina sat staring through a rain-covered window. Her own memories had begun surfacing, not of Nabintu, of her own mother years ago. A hospital bed in Kumasi, machines, visitors, fear, then loss. That experience had shaped more of her life than she admitted. When conversations about elderly care began years earlier, she had never said the full truth. She told Cato she felt overwhelmed. She told him finances were tight. She told him professional care might be better. All true. Yet beneath those truths lived another one. Hospitals frightened her. Dependence frightened her. Watching someone fade frightened her. She had spent years running from that fear without recognizing it, and in running from it, she had helped create another wound. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just quietly, the way many painful things happen. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Mama Atom had taken the chair beside her. The nursing home manager held a paper cup of tea. Steam curled upward. "You care about her." Amina looked surprised. "Of course." Mama Atom nodded. "Fear does strange things." Amina stared at the tea. Rainwater streaked down the glass. For several moments neither woman spoke. Then Mama Atom added something unexpected. When Nabintu first arrived, she unpacked only 3 things. Amina looked up. The notebook, the sweater, the bracelet. Mama Atom smiled faintly. She thought she'd be gone before the next rainy season. The words landed softly, yet Amina felt them, because she remembered making the same assumption. A few weeks, maybe a month. Then life became busy, then uncomfortable, then easier not to revisit. Meanwhile, several chairs away, Cato sat alone. The yellow bracelet rested in his hand. He turned it slowly. The missing ear caught the light. He remembered that day perfectly now, not because it had been important at the time, because it had become important afterward. The drive home from Hope Gardens. Tendo asleep in the back seat. Amina silent, the radio off, the empty space where his mother usually sat during family outings. At one point he almost turned around. Almost. The memory stopped there. Almost is a difficult word. Almost called, almost visited, almost apologized, almost went back. Life contains entire tragedies hidden inside that one word. Across the corridor stood a vending machine. Its bright lights hummed softly. Cato stared at it, and another memory surfaced. 6 months after leaving Nabintu at Hope Gardens, he had actually returned. No one knew, not even Amina. It happened on a Tuesday. A work meeting nearby ended early. The nursing home was only a short drive away. Without planning it, he found himself parked outside the gate. The same blue gate, the same flowering vines, the same sign. He sat there for nearly 20 minutes, watching, thinking, waiting for courage. Then he saw something. Nabintu in the courtyard, laughing with several residents, helping an elderly man with his walking stick. For a moment she looked happy, or what Cato interpreted as happy. He remained in the car, one hand on the steering wheel, one on the door handle. Then he convinced himself of something. She was doing fine. Maybe better without his problems. Maybe better without his failures. Maybe better without the burden he had become. So he drove away and never mentioned it. Back in the hospital, he rubbed his forehead. The memory no longer comforted him. It accused him, not because visiting would have fixed everything, because he had chosen assumption over conversation. Nearby, Nabintu adjusted the blanket Nurse Wanjiru had placed over her knees. The motion reminded him of something else. Every Sunday, 4 o'clock, the phone calls. Suddenly he understood, or at least part of it, the blocked number. At first it had been practical, temporary. Each call triggered guilt. Each voicemail reopened things he wanted to avoid. Each missed conversation reminded him of debts, failure, shame. So he blocked the number, not forever, just for a while. At least that was the plan. Days became months. Months became years. The block remained. 1 button, 3 years. The arithmetic felt impossible. Yet there it was. A hospital door opened. Everyone stood instantly. Dr. Nalule emerged. Fatigue showed around her eyes. The procedure was still ongoing, but something had changed. Not enough to celebrate, enough to breathe. He is responding. The corridor exhaled collectively. Amina covered her mouth. Kato closed his eyes. Mama Atem lowered her head. Nurse Wanjiru smiled for the first time that day. Nabintu simply nodded, as though acknowledging news she had been waiting to hear. The doctor continued, "We are not finished." The caution remained, necessary, real, but the words responding and stable had entered the conversation. That mattered. Dr. Nalul returned to the treatment area. The waiting resumed. The storm outside began fading. Rain slowed, clouds shifted. Evening light pushed through the western windows. A maintenance worker passed down the corridor carrying a ladder. He stopped near the wall clock. The clock had frozen. The second hand no longer moved. The time remained fixed. 2:17. The worker glanced at it. Then continued walking. Nobody else seemed to notice. Except Nabintu. She looked at the stopped clock for a long moment. Then toward the emergency room doors. The clock remained frozen at 2:17. But somewhere beyond those doors, Tendo's heart had started moving forward again. The first night passed slowly. Hospital nights always do. The corridors became quieter but never silent. Machines continued their conversations. Monitors blinked. Shoes crossed polished floors. Elevators opened and closed. Life and illness took turns moving through the building. Around midnight, Dr. Nalul finally delivered the update everyone had been waiting for. Tendo was stable, not fully recovered, not completely safe, but stable. The words settled over the family like a blanket. Thin, temporary, necessary. For the first time since arriving, Kato sat down without immediately standing again. Amina leaned back against her chair. Mama Atem closed her eyes briefly. Nurse Wanjiru allowed herself a long breath. And Nabintu looked toward the ceiling. Nothing more, no dramatic reaction. Just a woman who had spent decades watching people fight their way back from dangerous places. She understood stability better than celebration. The next morning, sunlight entered through the eastern windows. The storm had disappeared. Fresh light stretched across the hospital floor. The frozen clock had been repaired. Its hands moved normally again, second by second, minute by minute. Time had resumed. Near dawn, Nabintu had finally been persuaded to rest in a small observation room. Her blood pressure remained elevated. Her donation had left her tired. Yet even while resting, she seemed alert, listening, waiting. At 8 o'clock, Dr. Nalul approached Kato and Amina. "You can see him." The sentence was short, but it changed everything. Amina covered her mouth. Kato stood immediately. Neither moved for several seconds. Sometimes joy arrives carrying fear behind it. Then they followed the doctor. The room was small, bright, quiet. Machines stood beside the bed. Clear tubing caught the morning light. Tendo looked smaller somehow. Children often do after illness. The body that once ran across playgrounds suddenly appears fragile beneath white blankets. His eyes remained closed, but his breathing had steadied. His color had returned. The machine beside him displayed numbers moving in calm rhythms. Kato approached first. His hand hovered above the bed rail, then settled there, not touching Tendo yet, just staying close. Amina stood on the other side. One hand covered her lips. The other held the edge of the blanket. No words came. There were none available. Outside the room, Nabintu waited, not because anyone asked her to, because she understood. Parents needed the first moment, the same way she once needed moments with Kato when he was small. Some things belong to certain people first. Dr. Naluli joined her in the hallway. The doctor held a tablet under one arm. "You saved us valuable time yesterday." Nabintu shook her head. "No, you did. The team saved him." The doctor smiled slightly. This answer did not surprise her. People who spend their lives helping others often speak that way, not falsely modest, simply accustomed to sharing responsibility. For several moments they watched hospital staff moving through the corridor. Then Dr. Nalule asked something unexpected. "Did you always keep such detailed records?" Nabintu looked down at her notebook. The cover had grown softer from years of use. My patients deserved accuracy. The doctor nodded, then glanced toward the room where Tendo lay recovering. So did he. The conversation ended there, no more needed saying. Later that afternoon, Kato finally approached his mother's room. She sat near the window. The brown cloth bag rested beside her chair. The yellow bracelet sat on the table. Sunlight touched its worn plastic surface. Kato stopped near the doorway. The distance felt familiar. 3 years earlier, he had stood in another doorway. Hope Gardens, the blue gate visible behind him, promises still fresh. Today felt different, and not different at all. Nabintu looked up. "Come in." He entered slowly. The chair across from her remained empty. Eventually he sat. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt full, not uncomfortable, just crowded. Kato stared at his hands. He had rehearsed conversations during the night, explanations, apologies, confessions. Now none of them seemed useful. "I don't know where to begin." The sentence emerged quietly. Nabintu folded her hands. "You already began." Kato laughed once, a short sound, not amusement, something closer to surrender. "I should have visited." Nabintu listened. "I should have called." Still she listened. "I should have come back." The words continued arriving, slowly, unevenly, years compressed into simple sentences, no defense, no justification, just facts. Finally he looked up. His eyes appeared tired, older. "I kept thinking there would be time." Nabintu watched him carefully, the same way she had watched him as a child learning difficult lessons, not rescuing him, not abandoning him, simply remaining present. Outside the window, sunlight moved across the hospital garden. Visitors crossed pathways carrying flowers. A gardener watered shrubs near a fence. Life continued. Eventually Nabintu spoke. "I know." That was all. Not because more could not be said, because those 2 words contained enough. Kato lowered his head. For the first time, tears appeared. Not dramatic, not uncontrollable, just quiet. One after another, like rain finally finding a way through a roof. Nabintu did not rush toward him, did not deliver a speech, did not announce forgiveness. Instead, she reached across the table and slid a box of tissues closer. A small action, the sort she had performed thousands of times for patients and family alike. Kato laughed softly through the tears, then accepted one. Across the hospital, another conversation was unfolding. Amina stood with Mama Atim near the cafeteria. Coffee cooled between them. Neither woman seemed interested in drinking it. "I owe her an apology," Amina said. Mama Atim nodded. "Perhaps." Amina stared through the window. "When my mother died, I promised myself I would never live through something like that again." The manager listened. No interruption, no advice, just listening. Amina continued. "I thought keeping distance would protect me." The words sounded strange once spoken aloud, yet true, very true. Mama Atim looked down at her cup. "Fear often disguises itself as practicality." Amina nodded slowly. The sentence settled somewhere deep. Hours later, near sunset, something changed. A nurse hurried through the hallway, smiling. Dr. Naluli followed shortly afterward. He woke up. The news spread quickly. Everyone moved, not running, not quite, but close. When they entered the room, Tendo's eyes were open, still tired, still confused, but open. He looked around slowly, the machines, the walls, his parents. Then his gaze stopped. Nabintu stood near the foot of the bed. For several seconds he stared, searching, trying to connect memory with reality. The face seemed familiar, yet distant. Then his eyes moved downward, toward the yellow bracelet resting in Nabintu's hands. The cartoon lion, the missing ear. Recognition appeared first. Memory followed. Not complete memory, just enough. The beginning of a bridge. "I know that." His voice sounded rough, small. Everyone smiled. Nabintu stepped closer. "You do." Tendo pointed weakly. The lion. Yet, I had one. Nabintu nodded. You did. The room became very quiet. Then Tendo looked at her again, longer this time, studying her face. Something stirred behind his eyes. Not certainty, not yet, but possibility. Slowly, he extended one hand above the blanket. Without hesitation, Nabintu placed her hand beneath it. His fingers settled against her skin, small fingers, wrinkled hand. 3 years of silence resting between them, then disappearing, one touch at a time. The evening sun entered through the hospital window and settled across their joined hands. 3 weeks later, Tendo walked out of Malago Hospital carrying a small paper bag filled with medications and follow-up instructions. The afternoon sun warmed the pavement. Traffic moved through Kampala as it always had. Taxi drivers argued about routes. Street vendors called out prices. Motorcycles threaded between cars. The city had not paused during the crisis. Cities never do. Yet for one family, everything had shifted. Tendo moved carefully, not because he felt weak, because every adult within 10 meters seemed determined to remind him not to run. The attention amused him, especially from Kato. Slow down? Dad, I'm walking. Walk slower. Dad. Amina laughed for the first time in weeks. Even Nabintu smiled. The sound of that laughter lingered long after they reached the parking lot. Recovery arrived gradually. Doctor appointments, medication schedules, restricted activities, new routines. Life did not suddenly become perfect. It simply became possible again, and sometimes possible is enough. During the following month, Kato drove to Hope Gardens every Sunday, always at 4 o'clock, the same time Nabintu had spent 3 years standing beside a telephone. The first visit felt awkward, the second felt less so, the third brought board games, the fourth brought photographs, the fifth brought ginger candies. That one made Nurse Wanjiru laugh, because she had watched Nabintu count those candies for years, one by one, Sunday after Sunday, saving them for a boy who never arrived. Now Tendo sat beside her eating them, the orange wrappers gathered on the table, tiny monuments to persistence. Hope Gardens changed too, not dramatically, just enough. Tendo became friends with Mzee Okello. The elderly man still claimed he was waiting for a government minister. Tendo accepted this immediately. Children often accept stories adults question. Every visit he asked whether the minister had arrived yet. Every visit Mzee Okello answered no. Every visit both seemed disappointed. And every visit both seemed secretly pleased. The waiting could continue. One Sunday afternoon, Tendo discovered the courtyard fountain. Purple jacaranda blossoms floated across its surface. He sat beside it with Nabintu. The yellow bracelet rested around his wrist once again. The lion's missing ear remained missing. He liked it that way. Grandma, Nabintu looked up. Yes? Did you really keep this for 3 years? He lifted the bracelet. The sunlight caught the worn plastic. Yes. Why? The question seemed simple, yet it carried years inside it. Nabintu considered her answer, then pointed toward the jacaranda tree. When that tree loses flowers, does it stop being a tree? Tendo looked confused. No. When the rainy season ends, does the rain disappear forever? No. She nodded. Some things stay even when we can't see them. Tendo studied the bracelet again. Children understand more than adults often realize. He didn't ask another question. He simply slipped the bracelet back onto his wrist. The lion faced outward, watching the world. One bright afternoon near the beginning of the dry season, Kato arrived at Hope Gardens carrying a cardboard box. The box looked familiar. Dust clung to one corner. The tape had recently been replaced. Nabintu recognized it immediately. The storage box, the one from the closet, the one containing forgotten pieces of family history. They sat together beneath the covered patio. A breeze moved through the flowering vines. Birds argued somewhere beyond the wall. Kato placed the box on the table, then opened it. Inside rested photographs, children's drawings, old birthday cards, a baby blanket embroidered with 2 faded letters, NN. The cloth remained soft despite its age. Nabintu touched the stitching lightly. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Kato removed another item, an old framed photograph, the one Amina had hidden inside the drawer. 3 generations, 1 cake, blue frosting, plastic balloons, a family. The frame stood between them, not as evidence, not as accusation, simply as memory. Kato looked down. I should have brought these sooner. Nabintu examined the photograph, then smiled. They arrived. Again the answer was small. Again it carried more than a speech. Weeks continued passing. Then one morning Kato arrived unexpectedly. Not Sunday, not 4 o'clock. Wednesday, just after lunch. Nurse Wanjiru happened to be nearby when he entered. She raised an eyebrow. Lost? No. Good. She pointed toward the garden. She's there. Kato found Nabintu trimming dead leaves from potted plants. The brown cloth bag sat nearby. The same bag. The notebook remained inside. The sweater remained inside. The life she had carried through difficult years remained inside. He stood quietly for a moment, then spoke. Come home. The words settled gently between them. No dramatic music, no audience, just sunlight and plants. Nabintu set down the gardening shears. Home, a complicated word. She looked around, the courtyard, the fountain, the residents, the nurses, Mzee Okello asleep beneath the jacaranda tree. Hope Gardens had become part of her life, not because she planned it, because life happened while she was living it. I will visit. Kato smiled faintly. I mean, live there. Nabintu looked toward the nursing home buildings. Several residents waved as they passed. One woman needed help with medication reminders. Another asked Nabintu to read letters because her eyesight had worsened. People depended on her here, not completely, but enough. She turned back to her son. I'm not ready. The answer surprised him, not because he disagreed, because he hadn't considered it. For 3 years he had thought only about whether she wanted to leave, not whether she might have reasons to stay. Nabintu touched his arm. I'll come often. Kato nodded slowly. The solution wasn't exactly what he expected, yet it felt right. Some relationships are repaired by moving people closer. Others are repaired by returning consistently. The Sundays continued, and that mattered more. Several months later, another Sunday arrived. 4 o'clock. Exactly. The same hour Nabintu once spent dialing a blocked number. Now a silver Toyota rolled through the gates of Hope Gardens. Tendo jumped out first. Amina followed, carrying containers of homemade food. Kato carried drinks. Laughter reached the courtyard before they did. Nurse Wanjiru shook her head. Every week. Every week. Mama Atim agreed. Neither sounded annoyed. Near the fountain, Mzee Okello announced that the minister still hadn't arrived. Tendo promised to keep waiting with him. Nabintu sat beneath the jacaranda tree watching everyone. The afternoon light filtered through purple blossoms. The breeze carried the scent of flowers and grass. The old notebook rested on her lap, not because she needed it, because habits remain. Nearby stood the brown cloth bag, the sweater folded neatly inside, the same sweater, the same notebook, the same woman, yet not quite the same life. As the sun lowered, Tendo ran ahead toward the residence building, then suddenly stopped. He turned back, removed the yellow bracelet, and hurried to Nabintu's room. A moment later he returned. Done. What did you do? Amina asked. Tendo grinned. Come see. Together they walked to the room. The evening sunlight entered through the open window. Golden, soft, warm. Hanging from the door handle was the yellow bracelet. The lion faced outward, its missing ear visible. The bracelet turned gently in the breeze, not lost, not forgotten, waiting where everyone could see it. And beyond the window, the last light of the day settled quietly across the worn plastic surface. 3 weeks later, Tendo walked out of Mulago Hospital carrying a small paper bag filled with medications and follow-up instructions. The afternoon sun warmed the pavement. Traffic moved through Kampala as it always had. Taxi drivers argued about routes. Street vendors called out prices. Motorcycles threaded between cars. The city had not paused during the crisis. Cities never do. Yet for one family, everything had shifted. Tendo moved carefully, not because he felt weak, because every adult within 10 meters seemed determined to remind him not to run. The attention amused him, especially from Kato. "Slow down." "Dad, I'm walking." "Walk slower." "Dad." Amina laughed for the first time in weeks. Even Nabintu smiled. The sound of that laughter lingered long after they reached the parking lot. Recovery arrived gradually. Doctor appointments, medication schedules, restricted activities, new routines. Life did not suddenly become perfect. It simply became possible again. And sometimes possible is enough. During the following month, Kato drove to Hope Gardens every Sunday, always at 4 o'clock, the same time Nabintu had spent 3 years standing beside a telephone. The first visit felt awkward, the second felt less so. The third brought board games, the fourth brought photographs, the fifth brought ginger candies. That one made Nurse Wanjiru laugh, because she had watched Nabintu count those candies for years, one by one, Sunday after Sunday, saving them for a boy who never arrived. Now Tendo sat beside her eating them, the orange wrappers gathered on the table, tiny monuments to persistence. Hope Gardens changed too, not dramatically, just enough. Tendo became friends with Mzee Okello. The elderly man still claimed he was waiting for a government minister. Tendo accepted this immediately. Children often accept stories adults question. Every visit he asked whether the minister had arrived yet. Every visit Mzee Okello answered no. Every visit both seemed disappointed. And every visit both seemed secretly pleased the waiting could continue. One Sunday afternoon, Tendo discovered the courtyard fountain. Purple jacaranda blossoms floated across its surface. He sat beside it with Nabintu. The yellow bracelet rested around his wrist once again. The lion's missing ear remained missing. He liked it that way. "Grandma?" Nabintu looked up. "Yes? Did you really keep this for 3 years?" He lifted the bracelet. The sunlight caught the worn plastic. "Yes." "Why?" The question seemed simple, yet it carried years inside it. Nabintu considered her answer, then pointed toward the jacaranda tree. "When that tree loses flowers, does it stop being a tree?" Tendo looked confused. "No." "When the rainy season ends, does the rain disappear forever?" "No." She nodded. "Some things stay even when we can't see them." Tendo studied the bracelet again. Children understand more than adults often realize. He didn't ask another question. He simply slipped the bracelet back onto his wrist. The lion faced outward, watching the world. One bright afternoon near the beginning of the dry season, Kato arrived at Hope Gardens carrying a cardboard box. The box looked familiar. Dust clung to one corner. The tape had recently been replaced. Nabintu recognized it immediately. The storage box, the one from the closet, the one containing forgotten pieces of family history. They sat together beneath the covered patio. A breeze moved through the flowering vines. Birds argued somewhere beyond the wall. Kato placed the box on the table, then opened it. Inside rested photographs, children's drawings, old birthday cards, a baby blanket embroidered with 2 faded letters, NN. The cloth remained soft despite its age. Nabintu touched the stitching lightly. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Kato removed another item, an old framed photograph, the one Amina had hidden inside the drawer. 3 generations, 1 cake, blue frosting, plastic balloons, a family. The frame stood between them, not as evidence, not as accusation, simply as memory. Kato looked down. "I should have brought these sooner." Nabintu examined the photograph, then smiled. They arrived. Again, the answer was small. Again, it carried more than a speech. Weeks continued passing. Then one morning, Kato arrived unexpectedly. Not Sunday, not 4 o'clock. Wednesday, just after lunch. Nurse Wanjiru happened to be nearby when he entered. She raised an eyebrow. Lost? No. Good. She pointed toward the garden. She's there. Kato found Nabintu trimming dead leaves from potted plants. The brown cloth bag sat nearby. The same bag. The notebook remained inside. The sweater remained inside. The life she had carried through difficult years remained inside. He stood quietly for a moment, then spoke. Come home. The words settled gently between them. No dramatic music, no audience, just sunlight and plants. Nabintu set down the gardening shears. Home. A complicated word. She looked around. The courtyard, the fountain, the residents, the nurses, Mzee Okello asleep beneath the jacaranda tree. Hope Gardens had become part of her life, not because she planned it, because life happened while she was living it. I will visit. Kato smiled faintly. I mean live there. Nabintu looked toward the nursing home buildings. Several residents waved as they passed. One woman needed help with medication reminders. Another asked Nabintu to read letters because her eyesight had worsened. People depended on her here, not completely, but enough. She turned back to her son. I'm not ready. The answer surprised him, not because he disagreed, because he hadn't considered it. For 3 years he had thought only about whether she wanted to leave, not whether she might have reasons to stay. Nabintu touched his arm. I'll come often. Kato nodded slowly. The solution wasn't exactly what he expected, yet it felt right. Some relationships are repaired by moving people closer. Others are repaired by returning consistently. The Sundays continued, and that mattered more. Several months later, another Sunday arrived. 4 o'clock, exactly. The same hour Nabintu once spent dialing a blocked number. Now a silver Toyota rolled through the gates of Hope Gardens. Tendo jumped out first. Amina followed, carrying containers of homemade food. Kato carried drinks. Laughter reached the courtyard before they did. Nurse Wanjiru shook her head. Every week, Mama Atim agreed. Neither sounded annoyed. Near the fountain, Mzee Okello announced that the minister still hadn't arrived. Tendo promised to keep waiting with him. Nabintu sat beneath the jacaranda tree, watching everyone. The afternoon light filtered through purple blossoms. The breeze carried the scent of flowers and grass. The old notebook rested on her lap, not because she needed it, because habits remain. Nearby stood the brown cloth bag, the sweater folded neatly inside. The same sweater, the same notebook, the same woman, yet not quite the same life. As the sun lowered, Tendo ran ahead toward the residence building, then suddenly stopped. He turned back, removed the yellow bracelet, and hurried to Nabintu's room. A moment later he returned. Done. What did you do? Amina asked. Tendo grinned. Come see. Together they walked to the room. The evening sunlight entered through the open window, golden, soft, warm. Hanging from the door handle was the yellow bracelet. The lion faced outward, its missing ear visible. The bracelet turned gently in the breeze, not lost, not forgotten, waiting where everyone could see it. And beyond the window, the last light of the day settled quietly across the worn plastic surface. Life rarely breaks apart because of one terrible moment. More often, it happens through small decisions repeated over time. One missed call, one postponed visit, one difficult conversation left for another day. Kato never stopped loving his mother. Nabintu never stopped loving her son. Yet 3 years still passed between them. Love remained, but distance grew in the silence. What changed their story was not a miracle. It was a choice made by a grandmother who carried a child's bracelet for 3 years without knowing whether she would ever return it. A choice made by a son who finally stopped running from his mistakes. A choice made by a family willing to face pain instead of hiding from it. The truth is that forgiveness does not erase what happened. The years cannot be returned. The missed birthdays cannot be relived. The unanswered calls will always remain unanswered. But healing begins when people stop counting what was lost and start protecting what is still here. Sometimes the strongest act of kindness is not saving a stranger. Sometimes it is opening a door that would be easier to keep closed. Nabintu did not save Tendo because she had been treated perfectly. She saved him because love had remained alive inside her long after anger would have been easier. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If you were Nabintu, would you have opened the door again after everything that happened? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about family compassion, forgiveness, and second chances.